You have done it again.
The egg goes in the pan, you give it half a minute, you slide the turner underneath, and it tears. The white grabs the iron and rips, the yolk breaks, and what should have been a clean fried egg is a stuck-on mess glued to the bottom of the skillet. So you do what everyone tells you to do. You re-season the pan. You look it up, you rub it with oil, you bake it in the oven for an hour, you let it cool, and the next morning you try again. And it sticks again, exactly the same way. So you think the pan must be the problem. Maybe it is too old or too rough. Or maybe cast iron just does not work the way people say it does. And you start looking at those smooth, non-stick pans at the store, the ones that promise nothing ever sticks. I want to stop you right there, because you are about to give up the best pan you will ever own, and you are giving it up for the wrong reason. The reason your food sticks to cast iron has almost nothing to do with the seasoning. 9 times out of 10, it is the heat. More exactly, it is that you put food into the pan before the pan was ready. Cold iron grabs. It is the cold that makes your egg stick, not a bad layer of seasoning. And the fix does not cost you a penny. It does not require a single product. It is 3 plain habits that take less time than reading the back of a seasoning spray can. My name is Anna Byler. I was raised Amish in Ohio, where the skillet on my mother's stove was older than she was, and in all the years I watched her cook on it, I never once saw her re-season that pan. She did not need to, because she understood the one thing that 9 out of 10 people get backward. Let me show you what she showed me. Cast iron is not like a thin pan that heats the instant you turn on the burner. Iron is heavy, it is dense, it takes its time warming through, and that slowness is actually its greatest gift, because once it gets hot, it holds that heat steady and even, like a stone that has been sitting in the sun all afternoon. But that same slowness is the thing people fight against. They set the pan on the stove, drop the butter in right away, crack the egg in right behind it, and the pan is still cold in its bones. That cold iron is what grabs your food. The egg grabs hold of the cold metal and holds on tight because there was no heat there to stop it. Hot iron does the opposite. When the surface is properly heated, fat spreads thin and fast across it, and that sheet of hot fat on hot iron becomes a slick layer between the food and the metal. The food rides on that layer instead of grabbing the iron. That is your non-stick surface, not a factory coating, not a spray, hot fat on hot iron. So the first habit is patience before the food goes in. Set your empty pan on a medium flame, nothing in it, no fat, no food, just the bare iron warming through. Not just the bottom, the whole pan, sides and all. Give it a full 4 to 5 minutes. I know that feels like a long time when you are standing there hungry, but you are not waiting for nothing. You are letting the heat soak all the way through that heavy iron, so there are no cold spots left to grab your food. Here is how you know it is ready. Hold your open hand about 4 inches above the surface. You should feel a steady, even warmth rising off the pan, not a blast of scorching heat, but a firm warmth that tells you the iron is hot through and through. If you want a second test, flick a few drops of water onto the surface. On a cold pan, the water just sits there. On a warm pan, it sizzles and evaporates quickly. But on a properly heated pan, the drops pull together into tight little beads and dance across the surface. They skitter around like marbles on a tile floor. That is the pan telling you it is ready. Now, and only now, the fat goes in. A tablespoon of butter, a spoon of lard, whatever good fat you keep by the stove. Watch what happens. On a properly heated pan, that butter does not just sit in a lump and slowly melt. It slackens and runs and spreads thin across the whole surface, hunting every low spot on its own. You tip the pan a little and coat the bottom edge to edge. That thin, bright sheet of melted fat on hot iron is the real non-stick surface. You just made it in 10 seconds with a knob of butter. No factory needed. Now the food goes in. And here is where the second habit comes in. And it is a habit of nerve more than of skill. Once that egg hits the pan, you leave it alone. You do not touch it. You do not nudge it. You do not slide the turner under it the second it lands. This is where most people ruin everything. They see the egg sitting there and they want to be busy with it. They poke at it. They try to lift a corner, and of course it tears, because they tore it. The egg was not ready to let go, and they forced it. Here is what happens if you wait. The white starts to turn from clear to solid. You hear a steady, gentle sizzle, not a violent crackling, just a calm sound of fat doing its work. Give it about 30 seconds, maybe 40, then take the pan by the handle and give it a small shake, just a little jog forward and back. If you did the first two habits right, something wonderful happens. The whole egg slides, the entire thing, loose, gliding across the pan, free as you please. That is the iron telling you the egg has released on its own. Now you slip your turner under, and it goes under easy because the egg already let go. You flip it, a few seconds on the other side for over easy with the yolk still soft, and you tip it out onto the plate. Clean, nothing left behind. A pan you could nearly wipe with a dry cloth. That is bare cast iron, and there is no coating in the world that does it better when the iron is properly heated and the cook is patient enough to let the food do its own work. Now, this is not only about eggs. The same two habits apply to everything you cook on cast iron. Sausage patties, pork chops, cornbread, pancakes. The only thing that changes is the patience window. A fried egg needs about 30 seconds before it releases. A sausage patty needs a minute or more because the meat grabs the iron harder and the fat inside needs more time to melt out. Pancakes tell you themselves. When the edges turn dry and small bubbles form on the surface, the bottom has released and is ready to flip. Fish is the most delicate. It needs the longest patience, sometimes 2 or 3 minutes, and it will tell you when it is ready by letting go cleanly without force. The rule is the same for all of them. If you try to move it and it resists, it is not ready. Leave it be. It will release when it is done. And here is a small thing my mother used to say about it. She said the pan knows before you do. She meant that the food and the iron have their own conversation, and when the food lets go, it lets go cleanly. You cannot rush it by pushing harder. You can only rush it by getting the heat right in the first place, which brings you right back to the first habit. One more thing about patience. People often turn the heat up because they think hotter means faster. With cast iron, hotter usually means worse. High heat scorches the fat, burns the outside of the food before the inside is done, and bakes a dark crust onto the surface that was not there before. Medium heat, steady and patient, does a better job in the same amount of time because the heavy iron holds so much energy already. You do not need to push it. You just need to trust it. Now the third habit. And this is the one that decides whether the pan stays this good for the next meal or slowly turns on you. How you treat the pan after supper is how it treats you at breakfast. And the old rule starts the instant the food comes out, while the pan is still warm. Warm iron lets go of everything clinging to it. Cold iron sets it like cement. So you clean it warm, not cold, not the next morning, not after it has sat on the stove overnight with a crust of grease hardening on the bottom. For a pan like the egg pan, where the food slid clean, there is almost nothing to do. A wipe with a cloth or a piece of paper towel, and you are most of the way done. If something did stick, a bit of fried-on egg at the edge, a ring of sausage grease that cooked hard, you do not reach for a wire scouring pad. That would strip the seasoning right off the surface, and the seasoning is that smooth, dark layer of baked-on fat that makes the pan work in the first place. You do not want to scrub that away. The old answer is right there in your cupboard, a handful of coarse salt, kosher salt, sea salt, whatever coarse grain you have. You throw the salt into the warm pan and scrub it around with a folded cloth or a wad of paper. The salt acts like a gentle grit. It lifts the stuck bits off the surface without touching the smooth, baked-on seasoning underneath. Salt is the old scouring powder for iron, and it has never been bettered for the job. Rinse it if you need to. A quick pass under hot water is perfectly fine. But here is the rule that everyone forgets, and it is the rule that separates a pan that lasts 100 years from one that rusts in a month. Any time water touches the iron, you must dry it at once. Completely. Not set it in the dish rack to drip. Not leave it to air dry on the counter. Bare iron and standing water make rust, and rust is the one thing that truly wrecks a pan. So you take your towel and wipe out every bit of moisture, then set the pan back on the burner on a low flame for a minute or two. Let the last hidden moisture steam away. You will not see it, but the gentle warmth drives water out of the very pores of the iron, and that is what keeps rust from starting in the places you cannot see. Now, the last step. While the pan is still warm and bone dry, you put in a few drops of oil, and I mean a few. This is where people go wrong in the opposite direction. They think more oil is better, so they pour in a generous coat and let it sit. And what happens? Too much oil does not absorb into the seasoning. It sits on top. It bakes down into a sticky, gummy, uneven layer that feels tacky to the touch and catches food worse than bare iron would. That gummy residue is what most people mistake for bad seasoning. They feel it. They think the seasoning has gone wrong, so they strip the pan and re-season it from scratch. And then they put too much oil on again, and the cycle starts over. They are chasing a problem they are creating themselves. So, a few drops only. Take a cloth, an old one you do not mind staining, and rub that oil all over the cooking surface and a little up the sides. Then take a clean, dry corner of the cloth and wipe it back off again. Wipe until the pan looks almost dry. Just the barest sheen, like a pane of glass that someone breathed on. You are not coating the pan, you are sealing it. A whisper of oil to keep the air and damp off the iron until the next time you cook. Any plain cooking oil works for this. Vegetable oil, canola, a thin smear of lard or shortening. What matters is not the brand. What matters is the amount. Too little is always better than too much, because too little just means slightly less protection until the next cook, while too much means a sticky layer you will have to deal with later. Then let it cool and put it away. Hang it up, set it on the stove, tuck it in the cupboard. It does not matter where, as long as the spot is dry. And the next morning, when you set it on the burner and start warming it through again, you will find that the surface is exactly as smooth and willing as you left it. That is the whole cycle. Heat the pan first. Let the food release on its own. Clean it warm with salt. Dry it completely. Seal it with almost nothing. Now let me tell you something that is not meant to make you angry, just to help you see the shape of the thing. Because once you see it, you will understand why nobody taught you this sooner. There is no money in a pan that lasts 200 years. The skillet my mother cooked on, the one I cook on now, will go to someone after me, and not one company earns a cent on that. But there is a great deal of money in a pan that wears out. The non-stick pans with the sprayed-on coating are sold as the easy answer. No seasoning, no fuss, nothing sticks. And for a year or two, they deliver on that promise. But then the coating scratches, it flakes, it dulls. Food starts sticking to the places where the surface has worn through, and into the trash it goes, and you buy another one. That is not a flaw in their plan, that is the plan. A pan that must be replaced is a pan that can be sold again. A pan that outlives you is sold exactly once. I am not telling you that somebody sat in a room and plotted to make your cookware fail. Nobody had to. It is simpler than a conspiracy. It simply pays better to sell a pan that wears out than to teach a person how to keep one forever. And the old knowledge, the 3 habits I just showed you, they do not have a company behind them. Nobody has a product to sell you for turning the heat down and waiting 4 extra minutes. So nobody has a reason to say it. And a thing nobody has a reason to say gets quiet inside of one generation. So there it is, the whole of it. 3 habits that cost nothing and take no special skill. Heat the empty pan on a medium flame for 4 or 5 minutes before any fat goes in, because hot iron releases and cold iron grabs. Let the food take its first set and slide on its own before you touch it, because the pan knows when the food is ready even if you do not. And clean it warm with salt. Dry it over the flame any time water touches it, and seal it with a whisper of oil, never a flood. Do those 3 things, and your cast iron will be smoother and more forgiving than anything the factory ever sold you. With nothing in it but iron and good fat, the way it has been done for longer than any of us have been alive. Tomorrow morning, try it once. Cook 1 egg on a medium flame. Give the pan 5 slow minutes to warm through. Put the butter in, let it spread, lay the egg in, and keep your hands off it until it slides on its own. Then tell me how it went. I want to hear from you. Do you have an old cast iron pan that was handed down to you? How old is it, and whose kitchen did it come from? Or did you find one at a yard sale, or buried in the back of a cabinet? Tell me about it in the comments. I read every one, and I always want to know whose hands a good pan has passed through. A good pan is a thing you are meant to keep, not use up. It asks for nothing but a little heat, a little patience, and a whisper of oil. May your kitchen always have one, and may you hand it on to someone who will treat it just as well. God bless.